Shalom and welcome. This week's portion is Chayei Sarah, which literally means the life of Sarah. But in the beginning of the portion we actually learn about her death and her burial. But the Torah is very skimpy. It simply says that she died, and then what Abraham did much later. It doesn't tell us how Abraham was told or any of the other details. So it might have happened something like this. One day, Abraham was sitting in the door of his tent when a young messenger ran up, exhausted and out of breath. "Abraham, Abraham," he cried as he ran forward and bowed low before him. "Steady, boy. Take a deep breath, relax, and tell me, why have you come in such haste?" The messenger slowly stood before Abraham, took a deep breath. "I have come from Hebron with sad news." And then he paused, unsure how to continue. "Say it straight out." The messenger took another deep breath and finally spoke. "Your wife, Sarah, has died. The servants and the handmaidens mourn for her even now, even as we speak. They wait for you." Abraham's face was drained of all color. He cried out suddenly, and in his grief he tore his robe. He called out for two of his lads, the same two that had accompanied him with Isaac to Mount Moriah. "Find horses, quickly. We must go speedily to Hebron." They rode to Hebron. Abraham was deep in thought. "I haven't spoken to Sarah since the incident with Isaac. I didn't know what to say. And now it's too late." His lads, seeing the somber mood of their master, didn't engage him in conversation. They rode on in silence. Finally, they arrived in Hebron. Abraham went to the place where Sarah lay waiting for burial. He stood in silence. Then a man came up behind him, put a hand on his shoulder, and asked, "Where's the burial going to be?" Abraham turned around and looked at the man with a blank stare on his face. He had not thought in his grief about the funeral. He needed a burial place, and he had to have it soon, because Sarah wasn't going to last much longer before burial. Then he thought, I saw a place as we were coming into the city, a nice field with a cave and trees around in it. I wonder who owns that field and what his price would be." So he turned to the man and he said, "You are of the children of Heth. Your people own much of the property around here. I need to speak with the landowners. Can you arrange for that?" Later that day, Abraham went to the gates of the city where the landowners had gathered. He said to them, I am an immigrant and a resident among you. Please, sell me some property so that I will have a burial place and be able to bury my dead. Listen, sir, you are a prince of God among us. Please, take the best of our burial places and bury your dead. No one will refuse your request. Abraham then bowed low before these people. You make a generous offer, but I must own the land. Tell me, who owns the field outside of the city with the cave in it and a bunch of trees around in it? That sounds like the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar. Speak to Ephron for me and tell him to sell me this field and the cave and the trees, and I will pay him his price. At this point, Ephron, who was among them, spoke up, and he said, Abraham, I have already given you this field. Before all my countrymen, I have given it to you. Please, go bury your dead. You make a generous offer again, but I must own the field. Here is the money. I will pay you for the field and the cave and the trees. Take this money and sell me the land here before all of your townspeople. Ephron looked at Abraham. Abraham, listen. What is 400 shekels worth of land between you and me? Abraham smiled a little bit, kind of cocked his head, and thought, Ephron has now told me how much he wants for the land. So Abraham took out his bag of coins and measured out 400 shekels of silver. And he gave this to Ephron in the presence of all of the landowners at the city gate. And thus Abraham purchased the field of Machpelah, the cave, and the trees, and they became the uncontested property of Abraham as a burial place. Then he took Sarah's body and laid it to rest in the cave. And surely this cave was very large. It was big enough not only for Sarah, but for himself and for his family. And as he stood there looking, he thought, this cave looks like it's been used before. I wonder. I've heard that Adam and Eve were buried somewhere in this region, perhaps in this very cave. Wouldn't that be something? The first two people in the world buried in the same place as the first two people to believe in the ever-living, invisible God. Wouldn't that be something? Then Abraham turned and walked out of the cave. The spirits of Adam and Eve watched Abraham as he left the cave. Then they turned to each other and smiled. And so it might have been.